I'm sorry, but we can't just hand out cash to anyone who walks in, bank manager. Jessica Keller said, her voice dripping with condescension, as she pushed the black woman's withdrawal slip back across the counter. Especially not amounts like this. Those words echoed through the marble lobby of Meridian. Financial's flagship branch. As a circle of staff had formed, one young woman leaned over to her colleague. Quamus loud enough to be heard. Yeah, right. She doesn't even look like she has that kind of money. Laughter rippled through the group as Angela, the undercover black CEO, stood there. Dignity. Shirt said their dignity intact, but humiliation by the second. What these employees didn't know was about to change everything about their careers, their lives, and this bank forever, when the woman they thought was not deserving to withdraw her own money revealed who she really was. Have you ever been judged before? Someone even judged before someone even knew your name or who you are. This story gives the most satisfying example of instant karma you'll see this year. And if you believe everyone should be treated fairly and respected, no matter what their skin color is, comment respect first in the comments section and hit the subscribe button. Now this story began when an elegant black woman stood calmly at the counter, her posture straight, her expression composed, despite being surrounded by bank staff whose faces ranged from dismissive to openly mocking. This was Angela Freeman, though none of the employees recognized her 25 years before that humiliating moment in the bank lobby. Angela Freeman stood behind a different counter wearing a pressed uniform and a name tag that read teller trainee. Her journey from that first position to the executive suite is nothing short of extraordinary. Angela didn't come from money or connections. What she had was determination, intelligence, and an unwavering work ethic that propelled her through the ranks of Meridian Financial, from teller to loan officer, from branch manager to regional director. Angela mastered every role she took on along the way. She earned her MA from Harvard, led record-breaking quarters in 3 different Division S, and developed a reputation as the problem solver who could turn around struggling branches when she reached the C-suite as Chief Operations Officer 5 years ago. Many thought she had hit the glass ceiling. They were wrong. 3 months ago, when Meridian's CEO announced his retirement, the board of directors found themselves at a crossroads. Despite Angela's impeccable credentials and 2 decades of loyal service, several board members expressed concerns about her readiness to lead in private meetings. These concerns seemed to focus less on hers qualifications and more on whether major clients would be comfortable with her black skin as the face of the company. After a contentious vote, Angela Freeman became the first black woman to lead Meridian Financial. Her acceptance speech was gracious, but pointed. I will ensure that every client, every employee in every community we serve experiences the same level of respect and excellence. No exceptions. These were empty words behind closed doors. Angela had been tracking a disturbing pattern of customer complaints, while overall satisfaction scores looked good. Digging deeper revealed significant disparities in service quality, certain branches, certain demographics. The numbers told a troubling story that the previous leadership had buried rather than relying on reports and secondhand accounts. Angela decided to see for herself. The undercover boss approach wasn't just a gimmick. It was the only way to experience the unfiltered reality. Her customers faced. The flagship branch downtown was managed by Jessica Keller, a 15-year veteran with an impressive record on paper. Her numbers were exceptional. High transaction volumes, excellent new account generation. But Angela had noticed something in the raw data. While formal complaints were few, customer exit interviews told a different story. People were leaving, especially customers. Actually yours, he said with false sweetness. You understand, right? It's for your protection. This humiliation was calculated and deliberate. Yet Angela maintained her dignity, standing straight, voice unwavering. I understand the need for security. I've provided my identification and bank card. I'm a bank card. I'm a customer of this bank and have been for many years. I'd like to complete my transaction now, please. That's when Richard called over Jessica Keller, the branch manager. She strode across the lobby with the confidence of someone who had never been questioned in her life. Her expression was a practiced blend of concern and authority as she approached Angela. Ma'am, I understand there's some confusion about your withdrawal request, she said, her tone dripping with condescending mention. She didn't introduce herself, Didn't ask for her name, just immediately assumed a position of authority over her. There's no doubt. Confusion on my part, Angela replied. I'm simply trying to access my own money. Jessica's smile didn't reach her eyes. 15,000 is a significant amount of cash. May I ask what it's for? This question, one that had not been asked of a single white customer making large transactions that morning, hung in the air between them. The double standard couldn't have been more blatant. If they put up a sign, the tension in the air was thick enough to cut with a knife as Jessica Keller stared down at Angela, her face a mask of practiced concern that couldn't quite hide the disdain underneath the bustling bank. Lobby seemed to quiet around them as if the very air was holding its breath in anticipation of what would come next. Mrs. Freeman, she said finally, glancing at her ID, her fingers holding it by the edges as if reluctant to touch it too much. This amount doesn't seem appropriate for someone like you. Someone like you. This bank prides in dignity, and we have a class of customers we serve, so we can't serve you here. There it was, the mask had slipped in those few words. Jessica had revealed exactly what this was about. Not security protocols, not banking regulations, just pure unfiltered prejudice, dressed up in corporate speak. Angela felt a familiar tightness in her chest, the same sensation she'd experienced countless times throughout her career. That moment when someone underestimates you, dismisses you, reduces your entire existence to a stereotype. Behind Jessica, the staff exchanged knowing glances. Beth looked down, seemingly uncomfortable, her hands fidgeting with a stack of deposits, slip that didn't need straightening. Her body language screamed discomfort, but her silence made her complicit all the same. Mark and Richard didn't bother hiding their amusement. Richard actually snickered, covering his mouth with gay, his hand in a poor attempt to conceal his laughter. I'm curious, Richard chimed in, leaning against the counter with newfound confidence. Now that his boss was back him up, his voice carried deliberately, ensuring nearby customers could hear. Did you come into some money recently? A settlement, perhaps? Or maybe an inheritance? Or maybe you laundered the money? The implication was crystal clear in their minds. There was simply no legitimate way a black woman could have access to this kind of money. It had to be some kind of windfall, some stroke of luck rather than hard work, intel, insand, and determination. White young mother with 2 children had paused her transaction at the next window, openly watching the scene unfolding. She pulled her children closer, whispering something in their ears, teaching them perhaps unconsciously to view Angela as someone suspicious, someone who didn't belong. Angela, deep breath. Her composure was remarkable. Given the circumstances, not a hint of the rage she must have felt showed on her face. I'd like to speak with someone who can actually help me complete my transaction. Please, someone with the authority to override whatever concerns you. Seem to have every word, Joel. Was carefully chosen, professional, reasonable, giving them no ammunition, no excuse to label her as angry or difficult. Jessica smile tightened, a flash of anger crossing her features at being challenged. Ma'am, I am the highest authority in this branch. I'm the manager. There's no one else for you to speak with. She leaned in slightly, lowering her voice to a stage whisper that was still perfectly audible to everyone nearby. Everyone nearby. Scent of her expensive cologne, likely meant to convey success and authority, wafted across the counter. Perhaps you might be more comfortable at the check cashing place down the street. They're more accustomed to handling your type of banking needs. You should get maybe $1. 0 or 2 there. The dismissal was so blatant, so disrespectful, that a collective intake of breath could be heard from customers who were shamelessly eavesdropping on the exchange behind the teller windows. The daily operations of the bank continued. The cash counting machines whirred quietly in the background. The security cameras mounted in each corner of the ceiling recorded everything, every expression, every word, every microaggression playing out in high-definition detail. Angela glanced up at one of those cameras, a flicker of something, perhaps knowledge, crossing her face so briefly that no one noticed. Without another word to Jessica, Angela reached into her purse, a modest leather bag that had been a gift from her team when she was promoted to coup, and pulled out her phone. Excuse me for a moment, she said, stepping slightly away from the counter while still remaining in full view of everyone as she dialed. Richard nudged Mark, both of them watching with smirks on their faces. Richard whispered something that made Mark stifle a laugh. Beth, The teller who had first assisted Angela kept her eyes down, but her discomfort was palpable in the rigid set of her shoulders. Another customer, another customer. Older black man in a postal worker's uniform watched the scene with a resigned expression that spoke volumes. This wasn't surprising to him. This was Tuesday. This was banking. While black, yes. Hello, Angela spoke into the phone, her voice taking on an even more professional tone than before. This is Angela, pro. This is Angela. Freeman calling Richard mimicked her posture exaggeratedly, standing up straight with his nose in the air, mouthing Angela Freeman calling to Mark, who stifled a laugh. Richard's performance was for the benefit of the entire staff, a show of dominance of belonging at Angela's expense. The bank's mission statement was prominently displayed on the wall behind them. Building financial success together with trust, respect, and integrity. The words now seemed like a cool joke in contrast to the scene unfolding beneath them. Jessica stepped forward, patience clearly exhausted, her polished leather shoes squeaked slightly on the marble floor as she moved, the sound oddly loud in the tension-filled space. I'm going to have to ask you to conclude your business elsewhere. You're creating a disturbance in our branch. The lower banks out there will be able to serve you, not here. The irony was staggering. The only disturbance was the staff's treatment of a legitimate customer attempting to access her own funds. But in Jessica's mind, and in the minds of those who shared her biases, Angela's mere presence, her audacity to expect equal service, was itself the disturbance. Angela continued her call, as if she hadn't spoken. Yes, I'm still at the downtown branch. No, they've refused the transaction. Yes, that's correct. Her calm was unsettling to Jessica. People in her position being denied service, being humiliated publicly, were supposed to react in one of two ways: explosive anger that would justify removal, or defeated acceptance that would end in retreat. Angela's composed resistance followed neither script, and it clearly unnerved her. Ma'am, Jessica's voice rose the veneer of professionalism, cracking further. If you don't leave the premises immediately, I'll be forced to call security. Angela turned slightly away from her, still speaking clearly into the phone. The bank's large wall clock ticked loudly, marking each second of the standoff. It was 10:17 a.m., a time that would be recorded in numerous termination documents in the hours to come. Jessica signaled to Mark, who reached for the security phone extension. The situation was escalating by the second other employees had stopped what they were doing to watch, sensing that something significant was unfolding. That's when Angela turned away from Jessica and spoke her final words into the phone, words that would change everything in the next few moments. Diane, I need you in the downtown branch. Now the name hit Jessica like a physical blow. Diane, as in Diane Porter, head of operations for the entire bank. Angela knew her. Angela had her direct number. A flicker of uncertainty crossed Jessica's face, the first crack in her confident facade. Who was this woman, really? How did she have direct access to one of the most senior executives in the company? The question lingered in her mind for only a moment. Before her arrogance reasserted itself, probably just name-dropping. She thought a bluff people like her always tried to intimidate with claims of knowing important people. Hit the subscribe and like button if you support Angela, the undercover boss in this story, in the headquarter branch. The executive suite of Meridian Financial suddenly burst into activity. Diane Porter stood bolt upright at her desk, her face draining of color as she recognized the voice on the other end of the line and realized who was calling her. Diane had worked alongside Angela for over a decade. They had broken countless glass ceilings together, navigated the treacherous waters of corporate finance as women of color, supported each other through personal and professional challenges. Get me every customer complaint from the downtown branch for the past year, she barked at her assistant. Every single one, even the ones that didn't make it into the formal review process. Assistant scattered as she grabbed her tablet and security badge. Her designer heels echoed sharply on the marble floor as she rushed toward the executive elevator, the one that could take her directly to the lobby without stopping in the adjacent conference room. Board members who had been reviewing quarterly projections found themselves suddenly interrupted as security feeds from the downtown branch were pulled up on the main screen. What's happening? Asked Jonathan Prescott, the chairman of the board, as technicians scrambled to enhance the exit. Audience, you need to see this, sir, replied the head of security. His expression grim, the color drained from Prescott's face as he recognized the woman being mistreated by their staff. That's Angela, Freeman stammered, another board member. That's our CEO. Yes, the security director confirmed, and this study has apparently been going on for 17 minutes already on screen. They could see it all unfolding in real time. The board watched in stunned silence as their CEO was treated with contempt in her own bank. Record everything, Prescott ordered, his voice tight with barely controlled fury. Every second, every zo. Word and get legal up here immediately. Back in the bank lobby, the temperature seemed to drop several degrees as Jessica began to realize that something was very, very wrong. The confidence drained from her face, replaced by the first flickers of uncertainty unknown to her and her staff, the security. Cameras had also captured their treatment of other customers throughout the morning. The pattern of discrimination that Angela had witnessed firsthand, every interaction, every disparate treatment, every preferential service was now preserved as evidence. The same system designed to protect the bank from malfrisate. External threats was about to expose the threat that had been inside all along. Angela Freeman stood perfectly still, phone now returned to her purse, watching as the realization slowly dawned on Jessica Keller's face that she might have just made the biggest mistake of her career on the 21st floor of Zeta Shudik. Meridian Financial's headquarters. Chaos had erupted in the executive suite, the normally quiet observation room, where security, feeds from all branches were monitored, had formed into a war room in a matter of minutes. Pull up every angle. We have Diane Porter, commanded, her voice tight with controlled fury. The head of operations stood ramrod, straight in her tailored navy suit, her usual composed demeanor, replaced by brawl, an intensity that had her staff moving with unprecedented urgency. I want audio. I want facial recognition. I want timestamps on everything. The security team scrambled to comply with her directives, fingers flying across keyboards as they pulled up multiple camera views of the downtown branch lobby. Screens filled with different angles of the same humiliating scene. Angela Freeman, their CEO, being treated like a criminal in her own institution. Camera 3 has the clearest audio, reported a young technician, his face pale as he realized the severity of what they were witnessing. And we have continuous sound. Footage from the moment she entered the branch at 9:15 a.m. Chandeliers and accepted the ceremonial key to Meridian Financial. The room had been filled with dignitaries, financial leaders, and press all witnesses to a historic moment as she became the first Black woman to lead a top 10 national bank. Jessica Keller had watched the ceremony on the live stream. During a staff meeting, she had applauded politely along with her team, made appropriate comments about progress and leadership, and then, apparently, she had forgotten due to the undercover, or chosen not to recognize the face of her own CEO when she walked into her branch. We've been watching. Diane Cheese continued, holding up her tablet on the screen. Security footage from throughout the day played in crystal clear definition. We've seen how you treated Mrs. Freeman, and we've seen how you treat others. The tablet displayed split screen comparisons, a white customer making a large withdrawal processed with it. Smiles and efficiency juxtaposed with a Hispanic customer's identical request met with scrutiny and suspicion. A wealthy-looking client escorted directly to an office, while an elderly Black woman waited 40 minutes for basic assistance. Every interaction in this branch is recorded. Diane said, her voice voice tight with controlled fury, every single one. And what we've witnessed today is a pattern of discrimination so blatant, so egregious, that it violates not only our company policies but federal banking regulations. She began listing the violations methodically, each one another nail in the coffin of Jessica's career. Differential treatment based on perceived race or socioeconomic status, failure to follow standard verification protocols consistently across all customers, creating a hostile environment for a client attempting to access their own funds, falsely accusing a customer of potential fraud. Without evidence, Jessica's face had turned an alarming shade of red. The carefully constructed facade of her professional persona was crumbling before everyone's eyes. This is a misunderstanding, she stammered, straightening her hair again. A nervous habit now rather than a power move. We have serious security concerns with large cash withdrawals. The protocols save it. Diane cut her off. We reviewed the footage of 3 similar withdrawals processed earlier today for other customers. The only protocol you followed consistently was discrimination. Richard stepped forward, tears streaming down his face. His previous confidence replaced by desperate self-preservation. I was just following Jessica's lead, he pleaded. We're trained to be cautious with unusual transactions. Mark attempted a different approach, his voice taking on a tone of professional concern. There have been fraudulent schemes, targeting what? This branch we were simply exercising appropriate caution in line with. We have access to every email, every memo, every piece of communication you've sent within this bank systems, Diane interrupted. Do not make this worse for yourselves by lying. The main entrance opened again as three members of the board of directors entered the lobby, their expressions grave. Jonathan Prescott, Catherine Reynolds, and Dennis Whitehill, the highest authorities in the company beside Angela herself, had come down from their executive suite to witness the reckoning in person. Their presence elevated what was already a catastrophic event for Jessica and her team to something unprecedented in the bank's history. Board members simply did not appear on the front lines of daily operations unless something extraordinary demanded that their personal attention. The lobby, already silent, somehow became even quieter. Customers watched wide-eyed as the most powerful people in the organization formed a semicircle around Angela, a physical manifestation of the support that should have been there all along. Throughout the confrontation, Angela had remained silent, watching not with satisfaction or vindication, but with the clear-eyed assessment of a leader witnessing the systemic failure that required correction. This wasn't personal for her. It was institutional, and her responsibility to address. When she finally spoke, her voice was commeasured and carried the unmistakable weight of absolute authority. Jessica, Richard, Mark, she said, addressing each of them in turn, making deliberate eye contact. You are terminated effective immediately. No. Raised voice, no dramatic gesture, just the simple, incontrovertible exercise of power by someone who had earned the right to wield it. Your actions today have demonstrated that you are fundamentally incompatible with the values of this institution and the legal requirements of fair banking practices. Angela continued, this is not a suspension or a performance improvement opportunity. This is the end of your employment with Meridian Financial. Jessica's face contorted with a complex mixture of emotions, shock, anger, humiliation, and finally the dawning realization that her career of 15 years had just ended in a spectacular public failure of her own making. You can't just, she began, but Angela raised her hand slightly, and she fell silent immediately. I can, and I have, she said simply. Thomas? She nodded to the security guard who had been watching the scene unfold. Pow, please escort these former employees to collect their personal belongings. And then off the premises, Thomas straightened, nodding with newfound purpose. Yes, ma'am, as security led the three disgraced employees toward the back offices to collect their things. The remaining customers and staff watched in stunned silence. There was no cheering, no celebration, just the solemn witnessing of accountability being enforced at the highest level. Beth, the teller who had initiated the interaction but had shown discomfort throughout, stood trembling behind her counter, clearly expecting to be next. Angela approached her, and the young woman braced herself for the inevitable. Instead, Angela spoke quietly to her. The words weren't audible to most in the lobby, but Beth's expression transformed from terror to confusion to cautious relief. She nodded several times, wiping tears from her cheeks. It would later become known that Beth was placed on the grotesque probation rather than terminated. Her willingness to acknowledge her mistakes and her visible discomfort with her colleagues' behavior had been noted by both Angela and the security footage. She would become one of the bank's most vocal internal advocates for equitable service in the months to come. Jessica, Richard, and Mark were escorted as the customers still waiting in the lobby, their personal items hastily packed into cardboard boxes. The full weight of what had transpired seemed to settle on everyone present. This wasn't just a dramatic firing. It was a public statement about what would and would not be tolerated in this institution moving forward. Angela Freeman stood in the center of the branch that bore her company's name, surrounded by the leadership team that had recognized her value in full view of customers, who now understood exactly who was at the helm of their bank. The transformation was complete. from being denied service to exercising the highest authority in a matter of minutes. The message couldn't have been clearer. Discrimination had no place in Meridian Financial, and those who perpetuated it had no future there after the terminated employees had been escorted. But so, from the building, a heavy silence hung over the flagship branch of Meridian Financial. Customers remained rooted in place. Staff stood frozen behind their counters, all eyes fixed on Angela Freeman as she surveyed what was now undeniably her domain. When Angela finally addressed the remaining staff, her voice carried not anger, but resolve, the clear, steady tone of a leader who had identified a problem and was already formulating its solution. What happened today isn't just about 3 individuals making poor choices. She began gathering the shell-shocked employees in a semicircle around her. It's about her. It's about a culture that allowed those choices to seem acceptable. A culture we are going to transform starting right now. The staff listened with rapt attention, many unable to meet her eyes, others nodding in shamefaced acknowledgement of truths they had long recognized but never confronted. Meridian Financial exists to serve all customers with dignity, respect, and fairness. These aren't just words on our mission statement. They are the standard by which every interaction will be measured moving forward. As she spoke, Diane Porter was already on her tablet initiating emergency protocols rarely used in the bank's history, transferring management authority, securing access credentials, establishing temporary leadership until permanent replacements could be found. Every branch, every department, every role in this organization will be evaluated, not just on profitability, but on equitable service. Angela continued the metrics. We value reflect the company. We want to be Beth, the young teller who had initiated the interaction with Angela but had shown visible discomfort throughout the ordeal, stood trembling at the edge of the group when Angela approached. Her tears streamed down the young woman's face. I'm so sorry, Beth whispered, voice breaking. I knew it wasn't right, but I didn't know what to do when Jessica, the others, rather than dismissing the apology or offering easy absolution. Angela listened intently, recognizing the crucial moment for what it was, a genuine opening for change, learning to stand up against wrongdoing. Even when it comes from authority, figures is one of the hardest skills to develop. Angela told her, but it's also one of the most valuable. What happened next would become part of Meridian Financial's corporate lore. A moment referred to in training sessions and leadership seminars for years to come. Angela Freeman, CEO of one of the nation's largest financial institutions, looked at the tearful young teller and saw not just remorse but potential. Beth, effective immediately. You're being promoted to interim branch manager. The guests from the staff were audible. Beth's eyes widened in shock. But I'm just someone who recognized that what was happening was wrong, even if you didn't have the tools or confidence to stop it. Angela cut in. That awareness is the foundation we need to build on. You'll have support, training, and resources, but more importantly, you'll bring the perspective of someone who has seen firsthand how things can go wrong and is committed to making them. Anna? Right, 3 days later, Angela stood behind a podium and blazoned with Meridian Financial's logo, facing a sea of journalist cameras and recording devices. The press conference had been hastily arranged, but was meticulously choreographed to deliver a powerful message. Today, Meridian Financial is announcing our new equitable banking initiative. Angela stated, her professional attire and commanding presence a stark contrast to the modest clothing she had worn during her undercover visit. This comprehensive program represents an investment of $50 million in anti-discrimination, training, community outreach, and internal accountability systems. The board members flanked her on the stage, their unified presence a public demonstration of institutional commitment. What the journalists didn't know was how contentious the emergency board meeting had been, with several members initially balking at the scale of investment and the public admission of fault it represented. It had taken Angela laying out the legal, financial, and reputational risks of inaction, along with the security footage from the branch, to bring the holdouts around. Now they stood beside her, at least outwardly committed to the transformation. She envisioned banking discrimination isn't just morally wrong, it's bad business. Angela continued, her words echoing through the conference hall. When we failed to serve all communities equitably, We leave talent, undeveloped businesses, unfunded, and potential unrealized the camera's hand across the diverse group of individuals seated in the front row, former customers of Meridian, who had experienced discrimination firsthand and had agreed to share their stories as part of the initiative. There was Michael Mandel, a successful entrepreneur whose loan application had been denied 3 times despite an impeccable business plan and credit history. Beside him sat Elena Rodriguez, who had been steered away from premium mental services despite qualifying based on her income, and James Chen, whose attempt to open a business account had been met with excessive documentation requirements not demanded of other clients. These brave individuals, Angela acknowledged them with a gesture, have agreed to serve on our newly established 2 Client Equity Advisory Board, ensuring that lived experiences inform our policies moving forward. The press conference would make national news, not just for the unprecedented admission of discriminatory practices by a major financial institution, but for the concrete, measurable commitments made to address them. In the weeks and months that followed, Angela Freeman became the face of corporate accountability in America. Her unwavering implementation of the promised changes, from revised hiring practices to overhauled performance metrics to community investment programs, demonstrated that her unwavering commitment went far beyond damage control branch. Managers found their bonuses tied to equity metrics alongside traditional performance indicators. Anonymous customer experience surveys were disaggregated by demographic data to identify disparities. Training programs were redesigned with input from civil rights organizations and banking regulators. And in every Meridian branch, a new sign appeared inside the teller windows. All customers deserve respect, dignity, and fair service. If your experience does not reflect these values, please call this number below, was Angela Freeman's direct office line. 6 Tadl's lines. Months after the incident that transformed Meridian Financial, Angela once again donned casual clothing and visited branches unannounced. But this time her purpose wasn't to expose discrimination. It was to witness the changes taking root throughout the organization. If you enjoyed this story, hit the like and subscribe button and share to others so they can learn from this story too.